Good
Thank
to
you,
see
Congresswoman. I don't think I'll ever forget what district you represent because someone on your staff told me that there's a nickname for your district. So what is it and what's the backstory?
Well, I have the honor of representing Deep South Texas, and that is the area on the north end that begins to be in between San Antonio and Austin, and then travels straight down to the border to McAllen, Texas. And we affectionately call it the Fajita District. And so I represent the Fajita District, and I'm very proud of that. We have a lot of great barbecues down in Deep South Texas and great fajitas too.
You won a second term in November. First Latina, first Republican to represent the district. But I want to go back to 2022. What is it that you think shifted in your district that helped flip it red?
Well, again, it's such an honor. And you talk about first, I'm also the first Hispanic female to serve a full term for the great state of Texas. So a really, really big accomplishment. And what an imprint that we have, not only on our community, but on the state, but on the national level as well. So you ask, what is the shift down there? You have to remember, I represent a Hispanic district. We are over 80% Hispanic. In fact, we have the largest Hispanic Republican district in the entire nation, right on the border. So the things that mattered most to the hardworking South Texans was number one, securing the border. That was the first and top issue. The second was the economy. Hispanics tend to have larger families, and that means more mouths to feed. Those of you who go to the grocery store know it's not cheap. So the economy really mattered as well. And of course, there was lots of families like my grandparents who came over so that their great-grandchildren could realize the American dream, and keeping that intact was also really important.
Yeah, I feel like given the district that you represent and where it's situated, we should talk about border security. I mean, what should the Trump administration do on that front? And I'm curious how involved you personally expect to be on any related border security legislation.
I started in the last Congress, that was the 118th Congress, and right away began working on H.R. 2, which was the Secure the Border Act. I sat at the table with then Speaker McCarthy to tell him about what really mattered along the border. I have a very close relationship to the Border Patrol Union. In fact, South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, we have one of the largest Border Patrol sectors in the entire nation. And we've had at times some of the largest illegal immigration come through our nation in our sector. So I come with a lot of experience and background. That being said, H.R. 2 brought some fundamental things that I believe will bring back in the Trump administration. Number one, it has to do with policy. And what that is making sure that we end the catch and release program. Number two, start the Remain in Mexico program. Look at infrastructure. But you know what is also lacking is technology for Border Patrol agents. You wouldn't believe, but they actually share cars where some of their agents will go to the border and another group of agents who started their shift, they cannot even get into a car to go to the border to protect our borders because all of the cars are in maintenance. They don't have enough in technology infrastructure, not only to keep Americans safe, but the agents safe and the immigrants safe. Because down in South Texas, we don't get snow like here. We have 110-degree weather. So you have mothers who are trying to migrate across that are pregnant, 9 months in 100-degree weather, putting their lives at risk. There's a lot of work to be done in that space.
I think zooming out a bit, out of your district and more at the national level, just the broader conversation about immigration right now, there's a lot of warnings from economists, a lot of the sources that I speak to, that the demographic tailwind is no longer at America's back and worker shortages are going to be the new normal. So how do you think about that tension? How do you shape immigration policy, but also make sure that we're still able to attract talent from across the globe?
Well, first, we have amazing talent right here in the United States. I have two kids. I have a 17, 18-year-old right about to get into college. And I am just amazed at what our youth, and you know what? I'm inspired and hopeful for our young Americans and what they bring to the table. But I am also compassionate to the needs of our different industries, such as agriculture. In South Texas, we have one of the largest agriculture areas in the nation, where we have citrus that is quite large, specialty grains. Why do I bring that up? Because they depend on H-2A workers, and they need those people who are going to come with working visas to help them harvest. And make no mistake, food security is national security. So we must make sure that our farmers and ranchers have the hands that they need to bring the food to our local grocery stores. So it's an important topic and one that I will be part of.
So how do you interact with the mayors around Texas, ones that are around or in your district? How do you communicate with them, and how do they help inform what you want to do in Washington?
That's a great question. And in fact, I have a purple district. It is really 50% Democrat, 50% Republican. And of course, I'm the first female, the first Republican in this district. They didn't quite know what to do with me yet. So when I first got elected, everyone just kind of stood in their chair like, what's she gonna do? Is she gonna be too far this way, too far that way? Oh, I'm not from her party. Is she gonna represent me? So the first thing I did for several months was I would have a phone tree every single week. Myself, my chief, we would call all the mayors and all the judges. It didn't matter what side of the aisle you were on. About 2 months in, my Hidalgo County judge, he's a Democrat, he says, Monica, he said, you have called me so much. He goes, I don't think I've heard from a congresswoman or congressman as much as I've heard from you in the last 2 months. He goes, you don't have to call me this much. And I said, I just want you to know, Judge, that I am with you. If you need something, I'm going to be here for you. So it was a matter of being able to build those relationships, and took some time and work, but the work is paid off. Now everybody sees that I'm not red, I'm not blue, I'm red, white, and blue. And that's what I was elected to do.
One of the big issues that you focus on, and is an issue in your district and quite frankly around the country, as the mayor of Columbus said, is housing and affordability, or the lack thereof. And I'd love to hear what the barriers are as far as allowing your constituents to make that step into buying a home.
So as I mentioned, my district is right on the border. We have a blue-collar, hardworking district, over 80% Hispanic. Our median income is $50,000. That's tough for many, many families. So affordable housing, HUD housing, is extremely important. And that's why I'm so glad to have been chosen as a vice chair for housing and insurance, because this space is so important, not just to my district, but to all Americans. So you ask, how do we connect, right? The local to Washington, D.C., because there is a disconnect. Number one, interest rates, which I heard were mentioned earlier, inflation, those are two things that must be brought under control in order to help make housing a reality.
But that's kind of out of your control, isn't it? I mean, interest rates, what can you do about that? I mean, the Fed is cutting rates, short-term rates, and long-term rates, which affect mortgage rates, are still going up. That's weird. So what can you do about that,
While we do value the Fed's independence, which we do, we cannot neglect what Congress has done when it comes to spending to spur the Fed's actions. So it comes down to spending. We all know that DC has a spending problem, and that's why there's so much focus on reconciliation, on budgeting, making sure that we cut out waste and abuse so that we can bring down inflation, legislation, bring down interest rates so that we can make housing more affordable to all Americans.
You were a former insurance agent, you were telling me, backstage, 15 years, right?
20 plus years.
20
yes,
plus
altogether.
years. Wow, okay. Obviously, the story in Los Angeles is about fatalities and the homes and the lives that have been upended and damaged or destroyed as a result of the fires. But like, there is this overstory, if you will, about insurance and the business of insurance. And there were a bunch of insurers pulling out of California. And I wonder how you think this event will impact insurance in the years to come.
Well, first I must say that there may be some mayors from California, and my heart goes out to all of those families and children who have suffered tremendously from the fires, and the brave firefighters from all across the country, including my district, who went to California to support our fellow Americans. Devastating, absolutely devastating. I have over 20 years in insurance experience, specifically in property and casualty. What I learned, although I must give this disclaimer, insurance is actually regulated by the state. So the state of Texas insurance laws are different from the California insurance laws. So I don't want anybody to think I know California insurance laws by any means.
Sure.
But what I do know is this. Insurance is about managing risk and helping the everyday American manage their risk but become whole or as close to whole when they suffer a loss. And with the companies that I worked with, they knew their risk. They have models that have been perfected over many, many years to determine what is a high risk. And when it's a high risk, they will charge a premium price for that high risk. So what I'm hearing from what you're saying, insurance companies pulled out either before or after because there was a high risk. Tragically, we're seeing that the insurance companies were correct in modeling it to be a high risk because we see the fire, we see the devastation. So how can we help the everyday American? And that is by deregulation. We see that regulation is what's killing businesses, it's killing Americans. And when we talk about housing, there are things. Let me just tell you this. When it comes to the space of housing, in America, we need 1.5 million homes. That's how many homes we need right now. The average cost of a home is $400,000. That's a lot of money. Well, because of rules that have come out of the Biden administration that were supposed to be in making homes more energy efficient, it was going to increase the cost of houses $31,000. It's just so challenging. So looking at rules, looking at regulations, and will ultimately help the average American to get into housing that is affordable.
Got it. We'll have to leave it there, Congresswoman. Thank you so much for joining Axios.